My guest is Father Lawrence Carney. We're going to be discussing his new book, The Secret of the Holy Face, The Devotion Destined to Save Society. Father, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks for having me, Mr. Garrett.
It's great to have you on the show, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about your new book.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited. I love this topic. I have lots to share.
Father, what attracted you to the devotion to the Holy Face?
That's a good question. Well, the best things in the church always start with contemplation. So I'm the chaplain of the Benedictines of Mary, Queen of the Apostles, and they're very strict about their silence. And there's a Sister Scholastica, who's the second in charge, and she doesn't have permission to talk to guests. But I get to talk to her like once a year. And so I asked her a question on Christmas Day. I'm going to write an article for a newsletter. What topic should I write about? And she said, "Oh, Father, the Holy Face." So that was about all that she told me that year. And I took that to heart, and I started to get into this devotion, and I found out how it was meant for me to be an apostle of it.
Mm-hmm. Why is the devotion important to you in your personal life?
Well, the devotion is important to me because, for one reason, I think it's going to help me to become holier. Another reason, while doing that, which is a great thing, it also is going to affect the situation we find ourselves in the world with the revolution against God. And this devotion is a counter-revolution against the godliness of people. And the beautiful thing is that it was given to us by God. And so it's a outline of how to live through these times and becoming holy simultaneously. So I like to use my time wisely, and this devotion just really utilizes that perspective.
We are in a very fierce spiritual battle, aren't we, Father Carney?
That's right. We certainly are. And the key is that we don't let the interference of the devil and the world keep us from the one thing that's important. That is our salvation. And that means to grow in union with God. So the contemplative life is key here. So this devotion helps us to see the interference of the world, the flesh, and the devil, so that we can put those where they belong with the help of God and Our Lady, and therefore we can really grow in the fruitful life of contemplation.
Father, in the book, you speak of the Archconfraternity of the Holy Face. What is that?
The Archconfraternity was started in 1885. What it is, it's a spiritual army that was erected around the object of the Holy Face of Jesus Christ. For there was Sister Marie de Saint Pierre, who was receiving revelations from Jesus on this specific devotion to the Holy Face in the middle of the 1840s in Tours, France, at a Carmel. And then Venerable Leo de Pont became friends with this Carmel, and he's a layman that is a great example for lay men to become holy. And he was a friend of the Carmel, so the mother trusted him to get to know Sister, this great nun, and she revealed to Venerable the inspiration she was receiving on her heart about how this devotion was going to be something important for France, but also something important in future times. So in 1885, about 40 years after the revelations, while DuPont was promoting this through his prayer life and through so many miracles that happened in his life, Pope Leo the 13th made it an Archconfraternity, and one of the first members to sign up was Saint Therese of Lisieux, of the Child Jesus and of the Holy Face. So an Archconfraternity, like a confraternity, is erected in perpetuity. So it should last until the end of the world. And it's like a religious order, but it's a level lower because it's not as strict, but it's a body of people that enroll so they can share in the indulgences and also in the graces.
You say in the book, Father Carney, that you'd like to get 1 million people to enroll. Why 1 million people?
Well, I just made up a number because we're humans. We need to have a target, an object to drive towards. And confraternities have been known to have promoters of them, like I say this often, Blessed Alan de la Rocha was a Dominican. He lived in the 15th century, and Mary appeared to him and pretty much scolded him and said, "You've not been living your life up to par." But she had mercy on him and gave him an invisible ring and a locket of her hair and put it around his neck and said, "Now preach my rosary." So he preached the rosary, and in his lifetime, when he died in 1475, he had 100,000 people join the Confraternity of the Rosary. Well, that was 500 years ago, before we had Zoom, before we had the phone, before we had the computer, and the printing press, I think, was just about coming around at that time. So he had to go and preach, without microphones, and that's how he got 100. So I think we could easily do 1 million if we're consistent with this message and keep putting our face in front of people. I think that we can get 1 million. And I think God really wants us to do this, because it's like Gideon. He only needed 300 men in the Old Testament to fight a large enemy. And we only need maybe 1 million men out of 7 billion people, men and women, to defeat the tyranny that seems to be hovering above us all the time.
As you speak of tyranny, we're seeing a rise in socialism, seeing communism's, the effect of that on society. Why is this devotion such a powerful tool of spiritual warfare to defeat communism and socialism?
That's a good question. So in many revelations, private revelations that come from heaven, we are admonished with a few words, but we usually don't get the names of particular enemies of the church. But in this devotion to the Holy Face, Jesus revealed to Sister Mary St. Pierre that the number one enemy to God were the communists. And it just so happened that these revelations started to happen concurrently when the Communist Manifesto was publicized. So, in the New Testament, Jesus spoke in parables. Well, he told a story, but usually there's a deeper point to the story. But the only people that really got it were those that were trying to grow in virtue. So this devotion has a parable with it too. If we're open to learning about it, that's usually the barrier, and we dive into it. We have so many ways to fight communism, and Jesus didn't mention communism only. He made it general, all revolutionary men that are attacking God. So we can name socialism, fascism, and you can just go down the list of all the people that are trying to do evil in the world. And this devotion is a bright light in that darkness.
Is the devotion a blueprint to overturn the elite's desire to enslave us?
Well, that's contingent on how we do. Just as everything's contingent whether or not God's going to help us. This is in the Old Testament quite a bit. So that's why it's so important for people like you and me to promote we're in cells. I'm in cells. I'm not in management. So my job is to promote this devotion because I think with all my heart and my bones that this can be a great spear, a great counterweight to communism and the evil that we have going on, the infiltration of the Catholic Church, for example. It's a Trojan horse. We know that it's possible for the Catholic Church to be infiltrated. She can never be completely eradicated, but she can be so weakened that she isn't strong. And that's because we as a human race in general have turned our backs on God. And so God only allows evil when a greater good can come about. And so one of those greater goods is promoting enrollment to the Archconfraternity of the Holy Face, living out the devotion that it was set out in this Archconfraternity. It has six requirements to fulfill as a member. And one of them is to come together once a month in monthly meetings, which is the direct opposite of what the revolution wants. They want us to divide and conquer, so we're all isolated, we get all depressed, and we're sitting at our homes all by ourselves. Where this devotion says, no, we want people to get together to see each other face to face, because we're created in the image of God. And when we start to act like God, like godly in a good way, then we can help attract others to get out of any depression they might be in by being with each other. And that's why saints are attractive. They give out an odor of perfume, of flowers, because their actions are just so beautiful to witness, because they're derivatives of our Lord Jesus Christ, his time on earth here.
Father, how does one become a member of the Archfraternity?
So that's a good question too. So one way to do it, if there's no confraternity in your neighborhood, that is to sign up with the Archconfraternity in Tours, France. And that center of the Archconfraternity is where Venerable Leo de Pont had an image of the Holy Face on his wall in his drawing room. He was a lawyer. He would do business there. But he had a light burning night and day. And there were 6,000 certified miracles. That means doctors signed affidavits saying these miracles have no physical explanation. And so that's where the center is. So that's where we can sign up. And there's a form that the Archconfraternity has put out. It's in French. We have English subtitles, and we have instructions of how you fill it out and how you can mail it in to Tours for about $1.20 foreign postage. And I think they also have a way to do it through the internet. So if people go to our website, we have that document so people can take a look at it and sign up. And our website is the League of St. Martin. So if people just type in the League of St. Martin, they'll find www.martinians.org, and they can go in there and get it. Now, I mentioned if there's not a confraternity in your neighborhood. So there's a few confraternities in the US. I'm not going to name them all, but for example, there's one in Dallas, there's one in Detroit, and I think there's one in Buffalo. And if you're close to one of those, you can go to one of the meetings and discern whether or not you want to sign up with them. So the idea is we are a little pious association, the League of St. Martin. So we're trying to get people to pray these prayers. So eventually, over time, they'll be able to petition the local ordinary, the bishop, to apply to become a confraternity themselves. And so how that works is they would get those statutes put to the bishop, and the bishop would sign off on them, and then we would give those to the Archconfraternity. And that's what the Archbishop of Tours told us. So we asked him, how do you start one? So we're just starting real small. Like, even if 2 people come together and they commit to for 1 year to pray these prayers, then they're going to be able to go forward. And we coach them, and the league does, and myself. So
Hmm.
hopefully that helps people get a little bit of an understanding of what the goal is, because it requires a lot of research, in my opinion, because it's good to know what you're signing up for instead of just signing a blank check.
Hmm. Father Carney, you alluded to this a little bit ago. Have communists infiltrated the Catholic Church?
Yes, I am very certain of that, because when I was starting a community of men at one time, and it didn't work out, but I went to Rome once to meet with some officials in one of the commissions of the congregations in the Vatican. And one of those members came back to the United States, and I had a little talk with him about 5 years ago. And I said, "What's the problem in the Vatican?" And he said, "The Masons are in charge." So that was very disturbing to me, because it didn't come from like a third party news source. It came from someone who works in the Vatican, whom I trust very much.
Hmm.
So that's the reality that I think we're dealing with. And it's good to know our enemy, because then I think it's less likely to be depressed, because it gives us a clear understanding of what we're up against. And if we beg for the grace of God to have charity, faith, and hope, we can have hope then that God actually is allowing this evil so that we can become stronger in our faith and in our charity. So I don't know about you, but like a raccoon, when put into a corner, I like to fight back. I don't like just to give up.
Right.
So if we know what's the enemy looks like, I think we can fight back, knowing, hey, we're in a corner right now. I think that's basically what people like me feel like. But we're going to fight back. And we're not
Mhm.
going to just fight back by swinging swords in the air. I think it's by listening to the parables that God's giving to us in these latter times, and actually begging God to fight this war for us. That's what this devotion has taught me so much, is that it's not so much on me. This is God's church. I think it was St. Pius X who would go to sleep at night and he would say, "I'm tired, God. This is your church. I'm just going to go to bed," because we're just human. This is God. God is God. He's perfect. He's got control of the situation. So I think if we just know how to work with God, that's why this devotion is so pleasing to him, because it makes reparation for 2 major sins in the first 3 commandments, which deal with God: blasphemy and profanation of Sundays and holy days of obligation. So I'm so excited that he gives us, as he does throughout all time, an outlet, so we know we're not just stuck in a corner. We have hope. We can have hope then.
Hmm. I want the listeners to know just what this battle is that we're in, and that there are tools to fight the battle. Why is the secret of the Rosary and the secret of the Holy Face so important for our times today, Father?
Oh, very good question. The Rosary is still a secret, and St. Louis de Montfort wrote a whole book titled The Secret of the Rosary, because when St. Dominic was given the Rosary in 1214 by the Blessed Virgin Mary, she pretty much looked at his sermons that he prepared, because he was a doctor, and she said, "No, just preach my Rosary." And when he would preach the Rosary, miracles would happen, and one heresy, Albigensian, would fall. And so that devotion of the Rosary actually almost died. So 100 years later, people like Blessed Alan de la Roche reinvigorated it by their preaching and promoting it. They were in cells, just like I am. So this devotion, too, it almost died. But I think it's coming alive, because I'm a priest that can give half of my time every day to promoting it. And I hope by me doing that and by writing this book that more priests will get on board with that, because it has such a clear outline. there's so many secrets that Jesus is revealing to Sister Mary St. Peter of how we can fight. And this devotion is for our times. As Blessed Pope Pius IX said, reparation is destined to save society. And I think he or someone else said, this devotion is for our times. So there's so many secrets. That's why I wrote the title, The Secret of the Holy Face, Devotion Destined to Save Society. I was in investments before I became a seminarian. I worked 3 years after college before I went to the seminary. And my job was to look at our portfolio of all of our companies. I was called the investment analyst. I was going to be investment officer, but then I joined the seminary. But my job was to see trends and to say, okay, this is going to be a shining star, guys. I recommend this one and this one and this one. And I say, we need to dump these. So those skills God's using for his kingdom in the Holy Catholic Church, and this devotion coming to me as it has, this is a shining star that has a great future. And I love being at the beginning of something great and working with God. It's just, when I was little, I used to collect baseball cards, and they had lots of value back then. They don't as much anymore, but if you got a rookie card, it was worth more money if the rookie got better 5 years later. But you didn't know he was good. He's going to be that good. You kind of had to get those rookie cards. So this is like a rookie card that has a great potential. I mean, I'm sorry for the analogy, but I think it can help make sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And as we pray the Rosary, where does Mary always lead us, Father?
She always leads us to Jesus Christ. She is the greatest human being that ever lived. She has received the title of Mother of God, and she's a creature, but she's the mother of our infinite creator. And so she wants what's best for us because she's the highest charity, faith, and hope of any human. And being so intimate with Jesus for 30 years during his private life, she knows how to lead us to him. And God gave her to us. So that's why I think in the French school, which started in Paris, and it was probably around the 16th century, but it produced someone like St. Louis de Montfort and some others. But they had an intense understanding of the relationship with the Blessed Virgin Mary in our spiritual lives. And I think that we're standing on the shoulders of giants from that French school. And at least in my personal experience, and in a lot of directees I have, a lot of people that I ministered to as a priest, people that have an intense devotion to the Blessed Virgin Mary, they have the best relationship with Jesus Christ. It is so much more fruitful because, as St. Louis de Montfort says, it's the more humble way, going through her. So that's why our leagues, our little prayer groups, we always have to have the Rosary as part of the official meeting. And then that usually begins the meetings. And I think for me, that just loosens my soul up to prepare me then for the devotion to the Holy Face. So then each group picks out 3 different prayers from the manual of the Archconfraternity of the Holy Face, like the Litany of the Holy Face, there's 2 of them, or the Chaplet of the Holy Face, or the Golden Arrow prayer. And those, I think they just work together so well, because we have such an intense environment of evil out there right now, that Our Lady's crushing the head of the serpent, but it depends on our prayer life. Everything's contingent on our human family, our Catholic Church. The holier we are, the more likely we're going to crush evil. And we can't be like Cain, who is my brother. We're a human family. We need to be holy so that we can get other people to be loosened from their darkness and in living in sin and come into the church or come back to the church.
Father Carney, where did the picture on the cover of your book come from? The Holy Face?
Sure. Yes. It came, my publishers are the ones that found it. Tan is the one that found it. Where is my copy? Oh, it's over here. Just a minute. Yeah, I saw that. Cover image, mosaic of Veronica's Bell in St. Patrick's Cathedral, New York. So this image is used under license from Shutterstock.com. So it's in New York.
Mm-hmm.
It's a mosaic. It's very beautiful. I was very pleased they got permission to get that because his eyes are closed and he looks so weak, but we know that he's strong. Um, he just looks so humble in that picture. So it just draws me. So I told Tan, please make a beautiful cover. And that's what they did. They really came through.
Father Carney, do you think that we all, in some way, shape, or form, seek to see the face of Christ?
That's a good question. I hope so, because one thing that is so important for each of us is when we die, we are going to go see the face of God at our particular judgment. And the fathers of the church spoke so much about how important it is to be aware of our end, the four last things, death, judgment, heaven, and hell, but also to think, what is it going to be like when we see him? Because he's going to be a judge at that point, and he's going to decide whether we're going to go to heaven or to hell. So I want to start off eternity seeing his face smile at me and come out with that love that we hear about in the Gospels. It seems like his face would be shining during certain times. Just like Moses, when he got the Ten Commandments, his face was shining. They had to put a veil over it. So there's promises in this devotion to the Holy Face. If we promote devotion to the face of Jesus, he's going to lavish us with promises. Like our face will shine brighter in heaven than other people. Well, that's a great promise. That's an eternal reward.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Father Carney, what else would you like to share with regular Catholic guys out there?
Well, one thing is, my dad once told me many years ago, he said, son, why does the church promote priests for sainthood? Aren't there more examples for lay people? And I didn't know how to answer him at that time. But after I read The Holy Man of Tours, Venerable Leo de Pont, I said, Dad, this is a guy you got to look up to as an example. He wanted to become a priest, but his hands were mangled because he got stuck in a fence. He was playing with his cousin, and his hands got mangled in a gate. And so back then, in the 1820s or 30s, they were very strict about that. You couldn't become a priest if you had those digits missing, your canonical digits. So he said to the priest, well, if I can't become a priest, I can still become a saint. So that's a perfect example for regular Catholic guys. I would say read his book, The Holy Man of Tours, because it's inspiring. Plus, he had an intense desire for the holy name of God. He did not want people to blaspheme. And that's because he was living in Martinique, where they still had the laws of King Louis IX against blasphemy. So when he moved to France and he heard blasphemy, because the laws were gone after the French Revolution destroyed those laws, he started hitting people on the face. And because he was so intensely angered at how they were ripping the name of God apart and his God. So I think regular Catholic guys read his book. It's back in print again. I have it right here. It's God Demands Reparation to the Holy Man of Tours, the life of Leo de Pont, and I think it's called St. Jerome Library Press. They printed it in 2021. So we even have it on our website, a link if people
Okay.
want to go there and buy it.
In the show notes, we'll put a link to your website, and
Okay,
we'll also put a link to purchase the book in the show notes.
great.
Thank you for being on the show, Father.
Well, thanks for having me. It's been great.
God bless you.
And God bless you.